here we are, back once again. It's only been a couple of weeks, so that's kind of exciting. As you see, we got fancy new equipment here. The little mic stand for the Rode video mic, which took me a second to get working properly, but now I think we're up and running. Everything looks good. Oh yeah, I even have mic levels on the Insta360 X4. Yeah, look at that. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're into September 7th here. And I was just thinking back, I was sitting there this morning, it's Saturday, I was looking through my photos from the summer. And my God, we just had the most amazing summer together as a family. We had great camping trips. We went up to the lakes here in Central Oregon. We went across the country. We had trips with just one of my daughters, had trips with the whole family. We've had an amazing summer. My stepson was playing soccer. Sorry. I just worked out today. The other thing that now that we're at the end of summer, I'm trying to get my chunky butt back in the gym on a regular basis, and got my butt kicked today by my trainer, who did a great job. It's a great workout, and I can, barely walk and barely breathe after all that. So bear with me. I might have to clear my throat occasionally. But where I was going with all of that is my wife, my new wife, my now second wife, although I don't like to think in those terms, but just for clarity for you guys, my now second wife, just is incredibly good at being focused on the importance of the events that we have right in front of us and how that fits in with the next year, the next 2 years. My oldest daughter, is a junior in high school, and this was kind of our last summer together as a family that didn't have all these big outside forces to compete with. My oldest daughter and my stepson have both started working some this summer. Next summer, it's going to be visiting colleges. And then the summer after that, it's going to be her going off to college. And this is kind of the last summer that we all get to be together and travel together and do stuff together as a family without these other big forces at work outside or coming at us from the outside. And it's one of the things I love about one of the many things I love about my wife is she is really good at seeing that and saying, hey, we have to make this summer really important. We have to make it a big one. It was a big one anyway. My wife celebrated a big birthday this summer, and I threw a big birthday party for her. That was one of the big events we had going this summer. But it was also just a big summer because it's kind of the last one we have together as a family before things start pulling our attention and our focus and our kids in other directions. So, sorry. We really went all out. Like, we traveled and did big trips and big camping trips and sailing together as a family and playing on the lakes and just time together. And for the first time, I took my younger daughter, who is now 13. Both the other big stuff this summer is we had big birthday for my oldest and a big birthday for my younger daughter. She turned 13 this summer. She and I went off on a little trip together, just the two of us, the first time ever. And I have to thank a good friend of mine for urging me to do that, because she was really, but all of our kids, my wife's two kids, my stepkids, they have all struggled now. It's been, 5 years of craziness between divorce and separation and the pandemic and then blending families together and then doing remote school together and And then for my kids, their mom getting remarried, and then me getting remarried. And it has been one big life altering thing after another. And my younger daughter, more obviously at times has struggled with that. My older daughter as well, she's had some hard moments. But for my younger daughter, I think it's been more obvious. And I was talking with a good friend of mine about it a while back, and he was like, go do something together. Sounds so wildly, absurdly, stupidly obvious. He was like, would the two of you go away together for a weekend and just go hang out and go do fun stuff together? And so we did that, and we had an absolute blast, and we had amazing conversations about everything under the sun, from podcasters and religion and faith and ghosts and fashion and school and the future and the past and her mom and me and my wife, and just all of it. We touched on kind of the nitty-gritty minutia of our lives, and we also talked about big things like religion and morality and ethics and integrity. We touched on all sorts of things, and it was just a fantastic trip to kind of end the summer. And then I took my older daughter out for dinner. We had a night out together when we got back. It has just been an epic summer. So I tie that in with another conversation I had with another friend who is right now, going through the first stages of divorce. And he was talking about, he's hanging on by his fingernails in some ways and trying to make sense of all this stuff, like you, like me, like I did, like so many of us, just struggling to figure out what the hell is happening to his life. And he was talking about parenting time and how he and his wife were trying to figure that out. And I asked him, I was like, have you talked with your kids about this? Because his kids are old enough. I think they're like 11, 12-ish. I was like, have you talked to them? Have you kept them, at an appropriate level informed as to what's going on and what you're talking about? And just, if nothing else, talking to them about making sure they feel they're still seen and cared for and loved and all that. We didn't really get into that, the touchy-feely, if you will, but I was asking him, like, have you talked with them? And he kind of said no. And I thought, well, you need to do that. In some way, at some level that is appropriate. They need to know what is happening, and they need to know where they stand and where their dad is and where their mom is and why this is, like, give it context and make sure above all else that they understand this is not their fault and this has nothing to do with them. And even at the end of the day, they are still loved and seen and cared for by both their mom and their dad. So, all of that to say, if you are in the midst of it and you're struggling, and by God, I remember what it was like when I was really just emotionally hanging on by my fingertips. And my kids were there for me in the most amazing way. And I have really, very imperfectly, but I've worked really hard to try to make sure that as we keep going, they keep feeling loved and cared for in exactly the way they made me feel loved and cared for when I was barely hanging on. So I would say to you guys, I know especially if you're going through this right now, if you're in the midst of it and you feel completely like your legs have been cut out from under you. If you have kids, in an age appropriate way, of course, maybe with the advice and input of a therapist, talk to them. Talk to them, and if nothing else, even if it's not appropriate for you to talk about your divorce or what's going on between yourself and your spouse, between them, their mom and dad, they don't know what's going on. At least make sure they feel like they are loved and cared for, and that they, as much as possible, you help them understand that none of this is their fault. And if you can, again, I know what it was like when I was really it was all I could do to get through a day. It's a different situation if you're in that, if you're stewing in that situation, if you're stewing in that place where you're just barely hanging on. Yeah, love your kids. Definitely don't take your anger out, your fear, your grief on your kids. Make sure they feel loved. Make sure they feel cared for. And if you can, if you have the emotional space, take them out. Take them, get them, go for a walk with them. Like, if you can afford to do so, take them to dinner. Like, help them really feel like you're still there for them and they are still loved and seen and cared for. And if it's possible to do so, talk with your spouse, even though the two of you are navigating a divorce. Or suggest as softly and gently as possible, but clearly suggest to your spouse that they do the same. Because, man, your kids are scared. Your kids are hurting. Not in the same way you are. Maybe not as much as you are. But they don't know what's going on, and they're scared, and they're hurting, and they're unsure, and they need you. So if in as much a way as you can, God, go for a walk with them, take them for ice cream, give them a hug, make dinner together, whatever is appropriate. And if need be, if you have snapped at them, if you have lost your patience with them, if you've been mean to them in a way that was not appropriate, sit them down and apologize to them. Let them know what it is like to apologize in an appropriate manner. Offer them as much love and as much of your heart as you possibly can, because they need it. I know you're hurting too, but they need it too. So hang in there, keep going. Wherever you are in this process of divorce or separation or family or relationship, there is a great path forward, and there are great things for you ahead of you. You just have to you have to go through the hard stuff first. You have to embrace the fear and the sadness and the sorrow and process that stuff and work through it. And there's amazing stuff on the other side of it. I had the incredible experience of kind of the last summer. This is 5 years back. I got to basically not quite be the full-time parent, but 90% full-time parent during the summer when my kids kind of tipped from kids to preteens. And that summer, that summer is a summer I won't ever forget. And this summer was another one of those summers. This is a summer that none of us will ever forget for a whole bunch of reasons. And that's what you want to strive for. Just have those moments together as much as you can. So, more to come. We'll talk soon. Hang in there.